Reaching out to Pakistan, India's Prime Minister meets his Pakistani counterpart in Lahore during a surprise visit. The first in more than a decade. Does it signal a policy shift? And could it be a breakthrough in tense relations between the two neighbours? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Sami, Zeidan. Well, it had been almost 12 years since an Indian Prime Minister last set foot on Pakistani soil. When it finally happened, we're told the meeting wasn't meticulously planned. It was an off-the-cuff stopover, officials say. India and Pakistan's mutual history has been punctuated with talks and tensions over the past 7 decades. But this visit to Lahore by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has raised hopes something might be about to change. He met with his Pakistani counterpart Nawaz Sharif for a brief 90 minutes on his way back from visits to Russia and Afghanistan. The meeting had been set up just that morning when Modi telephoned to wish Sharif a happy birthday. And it comes just a month after the two resumed high-level talks. Political leaders in both countries were upbeat about Friday's meeting.
Among the decisions taken was that ties between the two countries would be strengthened, and also people-to-people contact would be strengthened, so that the atmosphere can be created in which the peace process can move forward.
Well, that peace process is long awaited. In their 65 years of independence, India and Pakistan have engaged in 3 wars, of which 2 were over the disputed region of Kashmir. And relations have been especially rocky since the 2008 Mumbai attacks, which killed 166 people. India says those attackers were trained in Pakistan. Over the past 18 months of his term, Prime Minister Modi has sent mixed signals about India's willingness to negotiate in light of those attacks. Meanwhile, his visit to Afghanistan this week angered some Pakistani diplomats who fear India's influence in the neighbouring country. Let's get the thoughts of our guests now. We have here joining us in the studio in Doha is Naveed Ahmad, investigative journalist. In New Delhi, we have Sreeram Chaulia, professor and dean at the Jindal School of International Affairs. And in Kolkata via Skype, Sandipto Dasgupta, Newton Fellow at the India Institute at King's College in London. Welcome to you all. If I could start with Sreeram, how do you see this? Is this a turning point, a breakthrough, or just another incremental step forward?
I think it's certainly unprecedented the way it was all executed in a very short span of time and without any prior notice to anybody. So it was certainly, a breath of fresh air from Prime Minister Modi in terms of proactive diplomacy. Whether it will be a big turnaround or not, we have to see. Prime Minister Modi believes that he wants to effect a big turn in history for the subcontinent and to unite the peoples of the subcontinent. He has this broad liberal vision for creating trade, commerce and connectivity across borders. And much of it, of course, has been stymied by our hot and cold relationship with Pakistan. And I think he is hoping this time will be different. There are, of course, skeptics who will look back in history and say, every time we have held out the olive branch, it has been disastrous and we have paid a price in terms of being seen as weak. But I think this time is hopefully going to be different, and Mr. Modi has done his homework well. He has also adopted a kind of a back-channel track. Some people are calling it stealth diplomacy.
Okay, before we get into the back channels,
this time it is not idealistic, but also based on realistic expectations.
All right, Sreeram, let me grab onto a sentence you said there. This time it looks different. Do you agree with that cautious optimism we're hearing from Sreeram, Naveed?
Well, Mr. Modi started with very offensive language. He used to call Pakistan expert liars, enemy country, and now suddenly he's trying to open the channels. His national security advisors meet his Pakistani counterpart in Thailand. Foreign minister visits Pakistan, and he also then suddenly comes to Pakistan for 90 minutes. I don't see much in this. It's like in 10 years or 15 years, there is a rain in a very small part of a desert that makes a news.
But if he's gone, as you said,
doesn't change.
If he's gone from harsh words to actually visiting Pakistan,
yeah,
is that
factors.
not in itself?
There are factors. One of the factors is that India is desperate to reach Central Asian market, especially reconstruction of Afghanistan, trade with Afghanistan. And without solving the issues, India has been pushing through the Washington channels and other channels that Pakistan should accept to give it transit access to Afghanistan. And secondly, India has this whole image that it believes that it is probably going to counterweight China in international economy and international affairs as a regional hegemon or power. This is all leading up to that. Over the past, since I was born till now, I don't see any change towards the betterment in terms of the issues of discord. We have newer issues. India has been taking out water from the rivers that flow in Pakistan.
If we could,
so
Naveed, we'll get into the actual issues and whether there's been movement. But if we could stay with this meeting, I want to ask Sandipto, why was this at least presented to us as an apparently completely spontaneous, off-the-cuff surprise visit?
I think there is good political reasons for both Mr. Modi and Sharif to present this as some kind of, impulsive, a very friendly visit, given that it was his granddaughter's wedding, and he sort of comes by, drops home for a cup of tea, sort of very informal, personal way, because that, I think, leaves a kind of an exit ground for both of them. It doesn't really work out, right? So you don't really make it into a high-level political, diplomatic summit, but make it a sort of informal meeting, which allows you, on one hand, to showcase the good chemistry and the kind of goodwill that you want to generate, a kind of a goodwill and restart the process, but also leaves you enough room to kind of maneuver back if the things don't go as planned. So I think that was a savvy political move. But on the larger question, I think I would my take on this would fall somewhere between the other two panelists to say, I think what I have is a skeptical optimism, not a cautious optimism, skeptical optimism, because I think a lot of our foreign policy discussions, especially in India and Pakistan, is often overtly focused on interpersonal relationship and chemistry. Which leader gets on well with which leader, someone writes a poem for the other one, they shake hands, they eat biryani, things like this, While I think there are very strong entrenched incentives on both sides, in India and in Pakistan, political incentives for political parties, which makes them difficult to resolve this in concrete ways, because it will require some big...
But hang on then, Sandipto. I guess then you don't agree with those analysts who are saying it's precisely Modi's personality, his so-called personalized diplomacy, which has made a progress, I don't want to say a breakthrough, but made progress possible.
No, I want to register that I think it's a good thing. It's an unqualified good thing that this is being done. I think it's always better to talk than not talk. There's no question about that. But I think there are limits to just personality. There are limits to just chemistry. And there's limits to this kind of, friendly dialogue, because there are, big foreign policy decisions, big countries, economics, military, security questions don't move on the basis of a warm handshake or a cup of tea. They require bigger structural shifts. They require both sides, both Pakistan and India, the political ruling elites on both sides, to spend considerable capital to resolve a dispute, which has been going on for nearly 70 years. So I think that has to be kept in mind before we, get overjoyed and talk too much about their body language and their chemistry. One has to realize that there are real, serious, entrenched issues which requires political capital being spent on by both Pakistani elites and Indian elites.
All right. I like the range of opinions we're having here. I think from skepticism, optimism to skeptic. What was it that you called it? Skeptical optimism, somewhere in between. Let me come back. Let me come back to Sreeram. In the last 4 weeks, we've had several meetings, haven't we? We've had the two leaders meeting in Paris. We've had Indian and Pakistani security officials meeting in Thailand. We've had India's external affairs minister visiting Pakistan, and now this meeting. Why have things suddenly started to move? I know Naveed said there's economic considerations at play here. What's your take on it?
I wouldn't go with the term desperation. I mean, Mr. Modi is driven by, a passion for making history and remaking history. And I think he's got the political capital behind him. The right wing, which generally objects to any peace overtures to Pakistan, is more or less firmly under control and is now singing his praises. So I think, this is like our Ronald Reagan kind of moment where actually the right, which is in control, can deliver peace and can win over all the objectors and the spoilers. But nonetheless, he has tried to shield the whole process, which is very like a delicate flower, from being attacked by spoil sports, and therefore he has shrouded it, in a lot of secrecy. And I think he has been springing this fait accompli on the people. And in many ways, the public opinion and society is very much in favor of this because he's been able to mobilize this. So it is true that in the past there was harsh rhetoric, but then it was also based upon what India perceived as whether Pakistan was reciprocating or not. It's a very dynamic and fluid relationship. And therefore, what we are seeing now, I think, is Mr. Modi wanting to, as he genuinely says, turn the page of history. And he believes that he has that, strong-willed personal diplomacy. So while, body language may not matter much, the point is, if there is a convergence of interests, and I think he sees Mr. Sharif as dependable. So while we have this, nuanced view of the Pakistani polity, there are many actors, the military and so on, but I think he believes that he can really walk hand in hand with Sharif, literally as well as figuratively.
All right, Naveed, there, the analysis that what we're seeing is a reflection of perhaps what the Indian Prime Minister genuinely wants diplomatically. Some reports say not everyone in Pakistan's cabinet and military are happy with this surprise visit and with the way things are going. How do you read the political atmosphere in Pakistan?
Well, Pakistani Prime Minister did the right thing to receive him at the airport and then, come back with him and see him off. This is what the general sentiment is. It's very good that Indian Prime Minister has come to Pakistan and a channel of diplomacy has opened.
You think the military supports it as well?
Everyone. The issue is personalization of diplomacy. On the other hand, Modi is trying to capitalize on his own self, and Nawaz Sharif is trying to do it here. And Nawaz Sharif has often been criticized for playing to the steel lobby in India because he is a big steel tycoon in Pakistan. And Nawaz Sharif's personal interest and, of course, pressure from Washington, these are two things that are pushing Nawaz Sharif to be very warm and cozy with the Indian leadership. And this Indian leadership has a history in Gujarat massacre. This Indian leader has been talking about certain other things until 2011, and then he stopped his foreign secretary to come to Pakistan for regular negotiations, and then composite dialogue was being shelved. Then there was this UFA declaration which bypassed all the issues that were there on the table for many years between Pakistan and India, and then it eventually got renamed as comprehensive dialogue, and we are back to the same table. Actually, Modi has been going through a transformation, and he has really tried to read international politics from an Indian perspective, and he has understood to an extent that Pakistan is important. You have to get maximum leverage out of Pakistan, and without giving much out of it. Now, what we are in Pakistan, general opinion is that we should talk to India. Kashmir should be sorted out. Siachen and Sar Creek, which are two issues which are not really politically sensitive, should be at least resolved. And then we can talk about other trade and other issues that India is very keen about. But Kashmir, there has been no progress about it. Even confidence-building measures have been going down. For example, three of Pakistani rivers are being violated as per the Indus Basin Treaty that Pakistan and India signed in the 60s with the help of World Bank. There are more issues coming on the table. This negotiation channel is nothing to celebrate. It is just that we are trying to reconnect from where we disconnected. And in mid-January, there is going to be a foreign secretary meeting. That is where the ball will get rolling or not. We have to
Sreeram wants to jump in. Go ahead, Sreeram.
Yeah, he didn't mention the biggest issue for India, which is cross-border terrorism. I mean, the investigation for the Mumbai attacks has been like snailish. And there's been a lot of backtracking. So it's good that the national security advisors have met, because for India, it's trade and commerce can only go hand in hand when there is an atmosphere free of jihadist violence and sponsorship of terrorism. Both on the Afghan side and on the Indian side, there is this serious concern about Pakistan being a hotbed for militancy and for jihadist extremism. The moment we are able to overcome that,
finish the thought, and then I'll give you a chance.
Prime Minister Modi has said that we are going to judge them by their action and intention on terrorism.
Okay, Naveed, go ahead very briefly. So
well,
we don't want to
absolutely.
get into...
Pakistan faced a problem of terrorism, and it has fixed tremendously. It was India which has been, poking its nose in Balochistan, trying to fuel sentiments there. And there have been other issues, other incidents in which similar Bombay-type attacks have been withstood by Pakistan over the past 5 years.
All right.
That is not an issue on the table. The issue on the table is
not
for the
sponsored by
past
India
50, 60 years. J&K has to be solved. There has to be more, CBMs on the nuclear issue.
Before we get bogged down in this, clearly what this shows is that there are still obviously concerns on both sides about what both countries see as the other side supporting what it calls attacks or terrorism or insurgencies on the other side of the border. Sandipto, Naveed did make a good point, didn't he, when he talked about how, there is a lot of history of problems here. Does this visit, does the diplomatic activity that we've seen in the last week indicate, or in the last 4 weeks, does it mean that positions have become more flexible on the real issues you were talking about? Especially when we're talking about a prime minister, he does hail from a party which has been seen as very hardline within Indian politics.
Absolutely. So my position was that it might have, except there's nothing yet to base that judgment on. You know what I'm saying? The real big shift in domestic policies and domestic rhetoric hasn't yet happened. So we might go back 5 years from now and come back and discuss this as the momentous shift in the Pakistan relation. Yet I haven't seen anything which justifies that as yet. I hope that's the case. And one example, the last 3 or 4 minutes of our discussion, that was sort of a microcosm of what happens every time this thing comes up in either India or Pakistani public sphere. The media, the political sphere. On the Indian side, people say terrorism, and Pakistan side is Kashmir. And this has been this exact same script has been going on for the last 20 years, right? And that goes to my point that there's real entrenched political interest, there are real entrenched sort of debates and rhetoric on both sides, which requires something more than, again, I think it's a good thing they did that. I'm very happy that the prime ministers get along really well and they had a good conversation. And I think there should be more talks because less talks is, of course, much worse than more talks, right? But to be more optimistic, to celebrate this as a historical, momentous occasion, because let's remember, we had similar moments back with the last prime minister, Mr. Vajpayee, or the prime minister before that, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. You have these sort of great photo moments and people get, this is the new dawn, new era, and then, nothing really happens.
Right.
So there might be big shifts. And I think Mr. Naveed has a good point. The two big shifts might be Afghanistan and sort of a shared sort of interest in developing and economic interest in Afghanistan. And, sometimes economics trumps even the most entrenched and money trumps even the most entrenched hatred. Maybe that's the case, except I'm saying there's nothing big enough in either Pakistan or India within the deeper structures of state and politics, which gives us the confidence to say that with any degree of certainty.
All right, so no clear indication yet. Sandipto reads the situation.
I'm saying we should look for other things, not these sort of things.
Okay.
There should be other things.
How about this, Naveed? This is wonderful. I know Kashmir is, of course, the top issue for Pakistan, but I can focus on one report. What do you make of this, that Pakistan has given some kind of commitment to speed up the Mumbai attack trials?
Well, I have been investigating that on my end of the word, and there was a big issue.
What do you make of it? Is that something that's
for Pakistan, the Indians were not serious. The dossier that was sent, that was in Sanskrit and Hindi, in their own language. It was not even in English. So it was sent back. There were basic problems in the diplomatic channel.
Pakistan so you're telling us basically there's no progress in terms of the thorny issue of Mumbai attack.
The legal
trials.
issues are being sorted out in the courts, and there has been a hearing just recently. The same is the case with Samjhota Express fire that was burnt, and so many Pakistanis died on the Indian side. It was like in the 90s, and nothing has happened. This is what Sandeep was talking about. That there is lack of sincerity, and there's too much to show off on the media. The real issues have to be addressed, whether it's Mumbai attacks, whether it's Samjhota Express, whether it's Siachen, Sir Creek, or elsewhere. people-to-people contacts. Everybody talks about it. Every leader talks about it. Rajiv Gandhi, Benazir Bhutto, Nawaz Sharif, and Mr. Singh, and now Modi and Vajpayee. What happened to the visa? Visa is a big issue, and this is that cannot be sorted out. The only
Okay, let me bring in Sreeram here. What do you make of suggestions that there have been behind or under the table commitments given? Is there anything credible to hold on to there that might make one think that this time, this level of contacts might go somewhere?
I think, the level of destabilization that's happened inside Pakistan because of Frankensteins who they themselves nurtured and who now come back to bite the hand that fed them is such that I think even some parts of the military and the intelligence establishment, which have traditionally been very anti-India instinctively and very jihadist in their mindset, I think they are looking for, turning a page. And I think that's what the NSA dialogue, the National Security Advisors dialogue, pointed to. So we should be hopeful on that count. But I think as Mr. Naveed has been mentioning,
how about, Sreeram, any changes on the Indian side?
The attempt by the Pakistanis to always create a sense of equivalence.
Do you see any reason that India might accept, for example, that long overdue UN referendum on Kashmir? Can a Prime Minister from the BJP party really afford to take a similarly bold position on resolving Kashmir as he's taken on, flying to Pakistan?
Look, these are 70 years down the line, and Pakistan has also not fulfilled its part of the plebiscite deal, and therefore, we are not heading back that way. The Kashmiris themselves have a view. I have been to Kashmir, the Indian part of Kashmir, often, and we find that there is a sense of normalization happening there. People are getting on with their lives, but the Pakistanis want to be involved in determining the status and the outcome. I think Mr. Modi is very clear on that. There's not going to be any giveaway. In fact, I think India is likely to stick to the status quo. And I think the Pakistanis are in a weaker position to be able to bargain now. They're economically not doing so well. And therefore, I think Mr. Modi senses that, by embracing Mr. Sharif, we're going to create a new kind of a liberal outcome, which is based on interdependence and on softening the border so that there's legitimate movement of people and goods, and so that we can all prosper. And there, I think Mr. Sharif's business links with Indian business persons are most welcome, because that's what's going to take us forward. I don't think we're going to ever give away
Sreeram,
what the Pakistanis demand in a maximalist sense.
Right, okay. Naveed's shaking his head here in the studio. Tell me.
Yeah, the whole thing about Kashmir not being handled by Pakistan properly, the United Nations Security Council resolution dictate how the plebiscite will happen. India has not committed its part to the United Nations Security Council, so they can actually start the process. At the same time, there is a symbol of UN presence, and that is UN military observers group.
Hey, hang on, let Naveed finish the thought, then we'll give you a brief comeback.
India has been desperately trying over the past few years to root out the presence of UN military observer groups on Indian-occupied Kashmir side or Indian-administered Kashmir side, while they exist on both sides, and that is a reference and a reminder that United Nations is part of the whole problem, and the problem is there. Pakistan's financial weakness may be there, but Pakistan is at par in military sense, and Pakistani political parties are really not forgetting that Nawaz Sharif is trying to personalize the whole issue and capitalize on his business links. This is not going to work. This is not neither India is a kingdom, nor is Pakistan.
There are a lot of allegations there, Naveed. How do we know, so we don't get into the turf of libel, the sort of stuff that you're saying about the Prime Minister of Pakistan trying to capitalize on his business links?
Mr. Jindal was still there. When he meets Indian Prime Minister in Nepal, that meeting was mediated and facilitated by Indian steel industry tycoons. Okay, this is everywhere, and we all have been looking at the same during Vajpayee's time. This is nothing new. Nawaz Sharif needs to make the dialogue more inclusive if it has to succeed from the Pakistani side, and address the concerns of same people like Mr. Sandipto.
We've just got a brief 30 seconds left, so I want to give a final thought to Sandipto. Is nothing going to come out of this other than some perhaps movement on people-to-people contacts, maybe visas?
I the future, I hope it does. I'm not optimistic yet. I think I sort of withhold my judgment for the moment. But I think something I really want to say, just because the last, 5 minutes of discussion here, all this supposedly issue of Kashmir, of terrorism, which we keep talking about again and again, I mean, India and Pakistan, both the countries, both extremely poor countries with lots of social problems, massive needs of population, have much, much bigger issues. Yet politicians on both sides have kept using these issues again and again, as if this is the most important central issue in the lives of Indians.
Let's end on that thought. Let's end on that thought.
We really need to move beyond that and look at the real issue.
All right,
by solving the issues, move beyond that.
All right, I'm afraid we are out of time. I know this discussion can go on for a few more episodes. We'll come back, I'm sure, to discuss this later.
Hardline is not going to work.
Let's thank our guests, Naveed Ahmad, Sreeram Chaulia, and Sandipto Dasgupta. And thank you for watching. As always, you can leave your comments on our program page at aljazeera.com. You can post your views on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or tweet us at AJ Inside Story. From me, Sami, Zeidan, and all the team, for now, it's goodbye.